Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us for this first ever edition of the Entrepreneurship Startup Guide for the year 2021. We know we're in COVID-19 times, second wave times, but really appreciate you still taking time to come through and be a part of this very, very informative discussion we are about to have. So the idea for those who are joining us for the first time of this event is pretty much a networking platform, time for different intellectuals, different professionals to get to meet and get to discuss. Usually we have a focus being our special guest every month. So we hold it every end of the month and we have a special guest, obviously we'll be introducing very shortly, but that's not it. Also from among you in the audience, we have different professionals, different individuals that you get to network with as the event goes by. But let's still remember to take all precautions, especially that we're in these particular times of COVID-19. So our guest this evening is the Chief Executive Officer of Liquid Telecom. So he's got experience in the ICT sector. He has over a decade experience in senior leadership. He's taken up leadership roles at Vodacom, at AfriConnect. He's also been Director of Enterprise Business at MTN Zambia, and now taking up the role of Chief Executive Officer of Liquid Telecom. Ladies and gentlemen, round of applause for our guest, Mr. Mark Townsend. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
I was telling you about to have a very long discussion, so I think it's better we sit. And as the event goes by, you'll also be engaged. We're going to have a Q&A session. You'll be able to ask some questions for Mr. Townsend here. As you can see, there's some notebooks courtesy of ITEL Mobile. So hope you have a pen with you. You can just jot down some questions that you might have, and more importantly, some key notes and key messages that he's going to give to us as the event goes by. But as we get into this discussion, I think it's very important, number one, we get to know a little bit more about Mark Townsend. I think people see you from the aspect of a CEO and somebody who's got this experience in the ICT sector. But let's get to know you from your background. First of all, from your childhood. Tell us about you growing up and the type of person that you've been from your younger days.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. I'm extremely humbled to be here. I've lived in Zambia all my life. I went to school just up the road here, the school called Lake Road, where I did most of my primary and some of my secondary schooling. I finished off my secondary schooling in Zimbabwe, the school called Watershed College, and after that went to the UK. While I was in the UK, my initial plans at the time were to play rugby professionally. And for the first couple of years I did. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. And otherwise I'll still be doing it now. That didn't work out. So I had to make a few decisions at the time, whether I would come straight back to Zambia or whether I'd hang around a little bit and gain some experience of being abroad. So I hung around for a few years in the UK. And that's where I sort of started my work and started to sort of get a feel for what I wanted to do in terms of my career and so on. I came back to Zambia a few years later, back in 2005, and I've pretty much been in the ICT sector since. Real time, then iConnect, which was Vodacom Business, Zambia, MTN. I had a little stint out when I was an MD at Garda World for a few years, and then obviously now back in the ICT world as the CEO at Liquid.
Pretty amazing story that we've heard so far. By the way, in case you know somebody's supposed to be here, you can definitely invite them, tell them that the event has officially started and discussion is here at the Quorum Hotel. It's the Entrepreneurship Startup Guide. By the way, my name is Chimweka Chileshe and I'm your moderator today. Why and how did you settle for the ICT sector?
Well, I think it actually came a little bit by chance. If I go back a few years, when I was in the UK and I had to look for work, which is not easy, something about me that people might not know is I don't have any tertiary education. I finished at grade 12. So
Really?
yes,
Okay.
absolutely. It's not like there was a lot of opportunities for me at the time. So there was this company that was selling vacuum cleaners door to door. It was commission based, no salary, and you basically, if you didn't sell, you didn't make any money. And I gave it a go, and I think it was a time when I realized what selling was all about. For me, I would say one of my biggest skills is probably within sales, to be a salesman. And I used to sell these vacuum cleaners door to door, did pretty well at selling them. And from there, when I came back, I had a few other jobs in sales in the UK. But when I came back to Zambia, I just looked for a sales job. Whatever it was, I needed a sales job. And it was fortunate at the time that Real Time were looking for account managers. And I applied and I got a job there as an account manager to sell ICT products. So essentially, it was my love for selling that got me into ICT and not really the other way around.
All right. And when we look at issues of people getting the work experience, and you obviously got to do that and you're getting experience throughout the particular process, from your journey so far, how would you say education, the role that education plays in one attaining a certain position, how vital is it? Because you mentioned the aspect of not attaining tertiary education, but still able to maneuver with the experience that you're able to gain. So how important do you think education is in attaining certain positions in society?
It's a very interesting question, and the reason being is that there's always a lot of assumptions made around that. I absolutely am aware that if you want to be a professional of some kind, a lawyer, a doctor, an accountant, you need tertiary education. I would never say to anyone who wanted to go into those fields, oh, don't worry, you don't need it. Of course you do. And there's a lot of studying and examination that has to be done for you to reach a certain level. But when it comes to business, to running a business, and to having the ability to run a business, I personally don't believe that you do need a tertiary education, because I'm testament of that myself. But that doesn't mean that at 18 years old you're ready to run a business. No, you're not. You need time. And so you replace that tertiary education with experience. And that experience is what you will gain over a period of time. So could my career have been shorter? Could I have got to the top quicker if I had tertiary education? Maybe. I had to start, as we call it in sales, in the trenches, in the field. I had to start there, and I had to work my way up from that particular point. Could I have started maybe a little bit higher? It's possible. But on the other hand, I believe that those experiences starting right down there in what we call the trenches is what I use now, more so than probably what I learned when I was in middle management.
How have you managed to overcome? That's if you've been experienced in the politics of having juniors who are probably who've been to tertiary school and whatnot. They have to report to you. What has that been like for you?
I think I probably have not told anyone that I don't have tertiary education until this particular point, so it's fine.
We're live, by the way. Feel free to share the stream. But when you have all these people who come to you and they bring all the technical stuff and all that, how do you respond to it without making them seem that, or making them know rather, that you didn't go through tertiary education?
Yeah, I think when you work, and I always say to people, and I always tell this to people in my team, is that if you're in a particular position, you should already be anticipating and performing as if you're in the position that's above you already. You should be thinking that way. You should be demonstrating that you can operate that way. If I'm an account manager, I should already be fully understanding what it means to be a regional manager or a sales manager. And I should even say to my sales manager, let me do 1 or 2 reports for you. Let me help support you in these areas. By doing that, you will learn what is required for you to do that particular job. You're not going to learn that when you're doing your tertiary education. You're only going to learn that when you're doing the actual job. Does it mean that you become maybe a little bit too, a little bit less technical, as you say? Possibly in your approach. But if you put enough thought into it, you can quickly figure out what's important and what's not important. And sometimes that ability to decide what's important and what's not important is better than somebody telling you all these things are important. So,
I think you also answered part of my question, the next question, but I'll still ask it maybe for more information. How exactly, we probably also have here people who are in the corporate world and trying to find out how best they can go to the next level. We have people who are increasing their knowledge as far as academics is concerned, going for their masters, their PhD, in the hope that they'll be able to elevate in the corporate ladder. What would you say are some of the major points to consider or major points to put in place if one wants to make their way up in the corporate ladder?
The first and foremost, you need to deliver. You have to deliver, okay? If you're not delivering, it doesn't matter what you do. No one is going to look at you as somebody who can excel in the business. Whether you are in the marketing department or in the sales department or an operational function of the business, whatever it might be, you need to deliver. Now, if you're spending time focusing on the important aspects that will ensure you deliver for the business, you will be noticed. If I'm a salesman and I'm hitting my sales number and I'm achieving my target, nobody's going to be worried about what I'm studying. Okay? They're going to be worried that I've hit they're going to be happy that I've hit my target. And that's the important bit. Because remember, there are very basic things about a business. A business has to be profitable. It has to achieve its numbers, its KPIs. You as an individual in that business, you have a component to play in that particular journey of that business. If you deliver on that, in fact, if you over-deliver on that, then it doesn't matter really what's happening in the background. The owner of that business, the shareholder, whoever it might be, is going to want you to continue excelling in that business.
And where does the aspect of loyalty come in play? Because in some institutions, what is seen is maybe the person who's had an amount of experience taking up a certain role or who's been there longer compared to the person who is maybe hitting those targets that you mentioned. Now that you're in an executive position, chief executive position, where do you also draw the line in terms of who to put into consideration if you're going to make that decision of elevating somebody in the corporate ladder?
Okay, I think it's very important to understand that every job and every role has criteria, okay? Tertiary education, experience form part of that criteria. If I am looking for somebody who needs to take up a technical role, of course, they must have the accreditation to take up that role from a technical perspective, whatever it's deemed to be. If they are in a more commercial role, then you can probably look a little bit more towards experience and delivery and less so on that accreditation. It's going to be difficult if you are in a highly professional role, or if you're looking at somebody who's going to be head of legal and they don't have a law degree. That's going to be very difficult, right? Okay? So it's about understanding what the parameters are for that particular role. And then, if people fit within that criteria, whether you're accepting that experience can overrun some of the education, then you would then look for the best fit out of those particular people. But for you to get into that criteria and to be considered, you would have had to fit within those brackets.
Still on your story and your journey leading to where you are now, at what point did you feel that, even when you're getting to leadership roles, did you feel that, you know what, I feel now I am ready for this? Was it from the onset? Was it in the middle of your operations, your work? You felt, yes, now I'm able and ready to lead a team. Before we even get to you being CEO, we just take it back from leadership roles, iConnect, which is now Vodacom. How exactly did you figure out that you are ready for this?
I think, leadership, the most important aspect for me for leadership is about taking responsibility. Okay, I see that leadership is about responsibility. Whatever you have been given, if you are willing to take responsibility for that, then essentially you are taking a leadership role in what you are doing. Even as an account manager, I was taking responsibility for the target that was given to me. That is showing leadership, because you are taking responsibility for what. It's no different now. Yes, I'm the CEO, but I still have a target. I still have KPIs to meet. Yes, and I might have a much larger organogram underneath me, but the concept is still the same. I still have a target. I still have KPIs to meet that have been set to me by my shareholders and stakeholders, and I have to meet those KPIs. And it's a similar thing. So for me, you can start to experience and embrace leadership, whatever role you're in, by firstly taking responsibility for what has been set out for you as a component of the business that you're working for.
And maybe just to get into some real talk, I know there's probably somebody in here who would agree and say, look, I'm doing my best, I'm meeting my KPIs, and I'm doing all this and that, trying my level best to get the next level. But real talk, how important is being well connected in these fields? How important is it in terms of who you know to get to the next level?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm somebody who values selling highly. Okay, I'm a salesman at heart. I have a sales background, but the number one entity that I sell every day is Mark Townsend. I have to sell Mark Townsend every day. Being here, I'm selling Mark Townsend. And I would encourage anyone to sell themselves first. Believe in yourself and put your best aspects forward for people to see and for people to align with. And because if you're not, there's many cases in a business where individuals are doing exceptionally well, but because they might not have the ability to sell themselves, somebody else actually is using their hard work to sell themselves. It does happen. So it's important to raise your hand when you're in a company, no matter what position you're in, to ensure that the people within that business, especially those who have the ability to promote and to make those changes, are aware of what you are doing and what you are contributing. That's the first part. Because you could be quietly in the back, solving the equation, and somebody else just takes it and says, look what I've done, and takes all the credit. And they get promoted, So for me, something I always did, no matter where I was sitting in the business, was to ensure that the people around me and the people above me were aware of what I was achieving and what I was doing, and also how I was doing it. That's the first part. But I think the second part, which is also very important, is that you also need to embrace and engage and promote the people around you. If you've got a personality and you bring an aspect to your personality where you actually enhance the people around you, who might be your competition for promotion, that also is very noticeable. And that is a key leadership quality. Because people will say, this person doesn't only have the ability to deliver, he has the ability, or she has the ability, to make others deliver. And that is a leadership quality. So not only should you make everybody aware of what you're achieving, but you should also ensure that you are making the people around you, your co-workers, achieve as well. Very important.
You speak about making your presence known in terms of people who have the power to at least make those decisions. But how exactly can this be done without showing insubordination? I'll give an example. If I'm reporting to the head of my department or my supervisor, and we're trying to avoid things, for example, I came up with an idea and the HOD takes the credit for the idea, and I want people to know, the decision makers to know, I'm the one who came up with this. But without looking like I'm trying to compete with my supervisor or trying to take his job, how exactly do we go about this, trying to let your presence be known in your junior position, but to the decision makers?
It's an extremely difficult environment when that is apparent. Okay. For me, I very much am the kind of leader who likes to spend time with all areas of the business. Those who would have seen, today I might sit in the call center and take calls from customers. Tomorrow I might go out with the field engineers and see them do an installation. Because I want to engage and I want to hear what they have to say. Because often a lot is drowned out by, other people. It's possible. So you want to engage and you want to be part of the entire team. But my advice would be to, of course, you don't want to be insubordinate in any way, and I would never encourage people to do that. But there are ways that you can ensure that what you are doing is visible. There are always opportunities to be visible. Your boss might go and leave. You have to act in his place or her place. It's an opportunity for you. You might meet. I've seen so many times. I'll give you a good example. Is I go and eat in our little canteen, and I actually watch to see who will come and sit next to me to have a conversation. Because if it was me and I saw the CEO, I'd go and sit there and say, "Boss, do you mind if I sit here? By the way, I was working on this thing, and this was my idea, and so on." It's not insubordination. I'm just having lunch where the boss is having lunch. Or I meet him in the corridor or whatever it might be. So, take your opportunities. If the environment is such that it's extremely difficult for you to do that, then you also have to consider if that's the right environment for you to grow. Sometimes you have to just know that you've reached a point where you might not go any further due to a number of reasons. And you have to think about what next.
All right, before we move on to the next bit of our conversation, just maybe by a show of hands so we know who we have here. Any members of the corporate world here? Any people who are in the corporate world? Show of hands. Okay. Any who are in business? All right. Entrepreneurs? Okay. All right, so I think maybe this next part, this part of the question, will touch on the latter. When we talk about growing a business, and I'll look at it from what you do. Obviously, it's a corporate world, but again, what you're running is a business in itself. How exactly do we differentiate somebody who is a corporate leader and an entrepreneur? Because at the end of the day, you are looking at bridging the gap in what is missing and providing a particular service to the customer, to the client.
Yeah.
So how exactly are we differentiating being a corporate leader and somebody who is an entrepreneur?
I think, so from my own personal perspective, I do have some other business interests that I don't operate because of the nature of what I do, but I own, and I have other people operating for me, but I can provide strategic leadership for what happens there. But I think for me, the key to any entrepreneur, the three key things that I always remember in myself is that you have to have the ability to sell what you're doing, whether it's a service, whether it's a product, you have to. And if you don't, then I would really implore people to make sure they have people close to the business who can do that. The second thing is you need to take the rough in the beginning and suck it up. If you are funding a business from very limited resources, plow as much money into that business as possible, because the more you can plow into it, the bigger you can make it in the beginning, the better it'll be in the longer term. And one thing with an entrepreneur, we should never think we've arrived. Okay, I've not arrived, I can assure you. And you must never have that thought, unless you want to retire, maybe. Okay, but until that point, we've not arrived. There's no okay, I'll just buy a nice car and I'm done now, and someone else can run the business, because it'll fall apart, I assure you. And the last bit, which for me takes me to any business and any career choice I have, is you need to get into the detail of your business. You need to get on the ground. I will spend time in, as I mentioned, the call center. I will spend time with the field engineers. I will spend time with the salespeople. I will spend time in the shops. You have to understand what's happening on the ground, and you have to spend time with your customers. You need to know what your customer is saying, because whatever your customer is saying is the true reflection of your business. If you sit in a boardroom and wait for your direct reports to give you very nice, colorful PowerPoints about how good everything is, you might get a shock down the line. You need to go directly to the customers. I do a Facebook live chat every 6 weeks where I allow individuals, customers, to come through and just say what they might be experiencing, whether it's good or bad. We need to hear it, because until we know, how are we going to fix it? For me, I have customers that will come to me directly, either on Facebook, or they'll come to me through email, or someone will even call me, get my number from someone and call me. We have to deal with that. We can't sort of fob them off to somebody else, because if you're the business owner, if you're the one who's taken responsibility for that business, you need to know. So for me, an entrepreneur, you have to get into the detail. You have to get into the nuts and bolts of your business and really know what's happening. You can't sort of be there in the beginning and set it up and then just let it run, because the person you put there might not have the same passion that you have for the success of that business. They might not have the same drive as you have for the success of that business. And they might not have the same pressure that you have for the success of that business. In fact, paying their salary every month takes away their pressure. Right? It takes away their pressure. You're the one who will eventually have the pressure. So for me, you can't set a business up and then just leave it. You have to get into the nitty-gritty. You have to find ways to, and I'm not saying micromanage. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to say understand and have little mechanisms that ensure that you keep a pulse on what's going on. Very, very important.
And still on the success of a business, at what point, because I know there's different risk factors that people put in place before they start that business, and more again, when the business is running. There's some entrepreneurs who say, if you can go past your first year in a business, then most likely able to carry on after. But at what point can one really say, this is not working out for me? Because there are others who would say, it was not working out for me, but I kept on trying, I enjoyed it, and the business is a success. And others say, look, this is not working out for me, I'm making losses. Let me stop this and try something else. Especially now that we're in COVID-19 times and we've heard of businesses shutting down. So at what point can a business owner get to be realistic with themselves and say, this is probably not working out? And if that time comes, should they have that thought in mind, or they should just persevere?
Well, I think from my personal perspective, I've had a number of businesses that have completely failed. And it's okay. It's all right, Sometimes the idea and the execution, they just don't match. And for whatever reason, it doesn't work out, It's not something to be worried about, That failure taught me what not to do the next time around. And even within businesses, you'll have periods where you make some mistakes. You do things in maybe the wrong way. And then you learn from them and you recover from them and you move forward. I think for me, entrepreneurs, generally, there's also a sense. You can sense whether something is going in the right direction or not going in the right direction. Having the ability to decide whether to stop and start something else or to push through, that's a personal decision. From my perspective, I funded a couple of businesses for a long period of time that didn't make any money. But I knew in my heart that, they were going to do it one day. I just knew, and I kept trying to, and you see, this is the other thing, is that you learn sort of what I would call some tricks of the trade that would support you. So one is that for me, one thing I will categorically say is you have to go digital with your business. You have to. This day and age, you cannot be not digital with your business. You have to use the tools. They are very inexpensive tools out there for you to make your business, promote your business much, much better than you can without using those tools. Simple things like digital marketing, customer engagement platforms, email tools, for me, it's tourism sector, so tools that will support bookings, that will support my ability to manage the ins and outs of clients that are coming into the lodge and so on. So, and online marketing, to find customers online. So I think one thing I learned a few years ago is that you have to go digital. You have to get your business online. Get your business transformed from those manual processes to digital processes. A lot of guys can run businesses from their smartphone. They really can. Everything just sits on the smartphone. So I think that's an important aspect. But yeah, the decision whether you push through or you stop is a very personal one. It's very hard for me to give anybody any guidance on that. But I honestly believe that if you have got to the detail of your business, if you have put everything you can into it, if you have tried all the angles and it's still for some reason, maybe because of circumstances like COVID or whatever it might be, exchange rate, so many things that will affect business, then yeah, maybe you would make the decision. But you also don't have to stop. You can just change course. It's also another option. I've seen a number of businesses that will transform because they see what's happening around them. So I'm a restaurant and I can see nobody's coming to eat. I can go into food delivery. I can use the same kitchen to go into food delivery. I can put my products online and I can deliver meals to people's houses. In this COVID period, there are people doing that and they're doing very well out of it. I might be a transporter and there's less people moving around. So instead of moving people around, I move to cargo. Airlines moved from actually flying people to flying cargo. So there are ways to just manipulate the core of your business and change its direction to suit those sort of environments around you.
And I'm meant to believe a lot of the entrepreneurs we have here are running growing companies. And maybe they're also thinking about a way of targeting certain clients or retaining certain clients. What's the secret to that? I mean, for a lot of startups, usually when you go to maybe a certain company you're trying to work with or a certain individual you're trying to work with, people don't seem to believe in you because you are a growing company. They have their favorites or they have people they've already established a relationship with, and which is also understandable because, again, as a business, when you establish those relationships, you want to retain them. So how exactly does one get to break that barrier, whether as an individual business or as a group running a business? How exactly can that be achieved?
Yeah, it's very difficult. It's a very difficult area to break into. It's where you have businesses that have been operating in a certain area for a very long time, and you want to break into that field and you want to break their dominance. A lot of customers, whether they're business or consumer, will go with the norm or go with what they know because it's easy and it's what they're used to. But I think for me, if you're a growing business and you are competing against, say, some of the bigger players in the market, you have to look for the niche. You have to look for what your value proposition is. If you go head to head, it's going to be very difficult. And it probably will come down to price and you'll be driven out of the market. A basic example a practical example I can give you is that, you look at the tourism sector for a start, okay? In the tourism world, there's been a lot of lodges and safari lodges that have been set up, and they sell their packages to international clients, mostly, charging in US dollars, and they have a very set way that they offer their service. They have a very set way that they offer their service. Now, if you are a lodge or a safari camp that are coming into that space, do you go and set up exactly the same as them, or do you do something different? Do you, for a start, change and say, you know what, instead of tapping into the international market, let me tap into the local market. Instead of charging in dollars, let me charge in kwacha. Instead of doing very good food at quite a high price, let me say, you know what, I'll do self-catering. So people can bring their own food. So there's a budget, management process. Instead of having a camp where you have lots of guests all together, let me make it exclusive. So you have to look at what's happening on the market, and you have to say, where can I be different? Where can I create a unique proposition so that I can place myself in this particular market? A lot of people will say, look, they're building another hotel, for example, right? It's exactly the same hotel. But if you go there, if you come there, even come here to the quorum, you'll see they have a very unique proposition, different to what's out on the market. So it's important, whatever your business is, if the 5 people in a row are selling tomatoes, sell onions, That's the way I would describe it. Sell onions. Do something slightly different. Because then you're not going to be... you're an insurance broker and you're going up against the big insurance companies, right? Instead of saying, do an online service. Do a complete online portal for insurance. So you don't even have to have an office. You don't have to have any of that cost. Everything online. So it's a purely online service. Where people don't even have to leave their office. They can go on, they can get a quote, and they can sign up, and they can pay there and then, and their insurance is done. So, you have to find the unique selling point for your business so that it's not competing with the competition. It's actually sitting in a slightly different space on its own.
And in a situation where maybe this is what's working out, for example, people are selling tomatoes and it's working out for them. This is what is in demand in that particular area. Is it still necessary to go there and begin with the onions, or maybe continue with the tomatoes and possibly just find your own set of clientele within that particular market?
Well, you as an individual will know from the research that you do. I would always implore people to do a lot of research before they start a business. Don't wake up in the morning and think, I'm going to sell tomatoes, and just go and start selling tomatoes. You need to do your research. But my point is that even if you enter that market, for you to get any business, you have to take it away from someone else. Someone else has already got that business. So by doing that, what are you going to offer that is different from what somebody else is offering? What is going to entice them to walk away from where they are to you? That's the key. That's what you have to think of. That's the unique selling point. And until you do that, it's going to be very difficult for your business to succeed.
And what's your take on having clientele, for example, friends? Say I'm running a clothing business, I'm trying to be unique where I'm able to deliver the clothes to you. And I see this happening a lot. You have friends who approach you saying they're selling this, and it's almost like it's an entitlement. You have to buy from that particular friend. And sometimes what we see is they have maybe the prices a bit higher than usual. You know somebody who can get it cheaper at, but they have a certain price there. So as a person who's running that business and I have a higher price because I know what it took for me to get to this particular price, do I also have to conform sometimes to maybe what other people in the market are putting their products at, just in the name of trying to get clients or retain clients? Should we take that risk as well of a possible loss just to retain clients?
Okay, so there's two questions in it. The first one is that, you mentioned that I know what it takes for me to get to that particular price. It's a very important question now, because two aspects to that. One, pricing is very important in a business, because if you do it wrong, the business will not be sustainable. Okay, it's very important. However, you also need to understand what's happening on the market, because you can build your cost builder, compare it to the market. If you're way off, then it's going to be very difficult for you to compete unless you can find some other way to repackage what you're offering so that it has more value than what your competitor is offering at a slightly lower price. One thing as an entrepreneur we mustn't do is we mustn't take the pressures we have and then convert that into how much I'm going to sell something for. Okay, that's a very dangerous game for somebody to be in. Okay, you say my rent is this, my school fees, so I have to sell this at this price. Okay, that's not going to work. All right, that will be doomed to fail. Okay, maybe you can say I need to earn this much, so I have to sell this many, right? But the pricing has to be. You have to understand what the market is, where your product sits, and you have to have a very clear indication of cost. And this brings me back to digitization, because by having key digital products, you can actually keep very close tabs on your cost structures. And your cost structures are not just the physical things that you pay for. They're your time, they're your effort. There are a lot of things that go into cost, and time is a very big thing. If I'm spending the whole day driving around, not really achieving anything, that's a big cost to the business. Because actually, I should be spending 90% of my time selling and getting customers. That's where the focus should always be. But if I'm having to, rush around operationally and not really achieve anything, then that's a huge cost loss or business loss to your business.
All right, so what I'm going to do now is just take a short breather. And when we come back from that, we'll be able to take questions from you as members of the audience. And do remember, it's an interactive forum, networking forum, so feel free to interact with one another, get to know each other. If you create business cards, get to share, and you can also get to know people from around here. So just take a 5 minutes break, and when we get back, we'll be able to take some questions that you have for Mr. Mark Townsend. Back in exactly 5 minutes. There's his, avail this time, even after this discussion here is done, he will stick around for a bit to get to interact with you. But for now, we will take some questions. We just restrict the questions due to time to about 8 questions. Before we get some from the left, but 4 from the left and 4 from the right. So just by a show of hands, if you have a question, you can just raise your hand.
Mark, my question to you, looking at the business model of Liquid Telecom, what differentiates you from Vodafone? Because when you look at the past, in terms of your product offerings, they're quite similar. And then also, in terms of going forward, will you be moving into the mobile space where you offer, the mobile lines and so forth, and moving in line with the fintech space as well, where you have these mobile money, mobile wallets? So that's really pretty much the question that I have for you in terms of where you see yourself now and where you're going. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll get into that. So I think I'll answer it in a slightly different way for you, but I'll bring it back. And it speaks directly to the entrepreneurs that are sitting with us today. And that is, as Liquid Telecom, we have seen clearly the future in the digital space. There's a lot of companies that will sell access to the internet in lots of different forms. Routers, Wi-Fi's, fiber, wireless, through your mobile phone. There's so many ways you can access the internet. But as a business, our future and where we see our positioning in the market is actually around the digital space. And what does that mean in a layman's term? It means absolutely working with entities, what we would call the SMEs, the startups, the entrepreneurs, to take their businesses from using these manual processes to using digital products and services. I talked about the marketing side. Every business should have a website. You have to have a website, and you have to have a functioning website. A website that is interactive, that gives your customer the ability to really have a feel for your products and for your services that you offer. And it has to be updated. You can't have a site that you put up and just keep for the next 5 years. You've got to update it, you've got to keep it fresh. Then once you've got that website, it needs to be marketed. So it needs to sit in search engines at the top. So when people are looking, they find it. It's also got to be interactive in terms of communication. There's got to be either a button that a tab that somebody presses and immediately they get a call back, or they're able to send an email to you or a message and you immediately respond. Because there's nothing worse than having a look at a beautiful website, sending an inquiry and never ever getting a response, right? The fish was biting the rod and you were too busy, you didn't even see, and eventually it even swam off with the fishing rod. So, it's really, really important to have that interaction. So the point that I'm coming to, which is very much speaks into entrepreneurs and what we want to do, is that for Liquid Telecom, the digital space is very important for us. And that's just, so I talked about marketing. There's also digital processes around sales operation, okay? We want to bring products and services to the market where we support the sales operation, the order processing of our customers. So if you are running a food delivery service and you have an automated website that takes the order, takes the payment, sends the information to your chef cooks it, it sends the information to your delivery guy or girl who arrives, puts it on the back of their bike and drives off. No one had to make a phone call. Nobody had to check where anybody was. It's a smooth digital process that is supporting not only your business for food delivery, but the delivery service of the bike company as well, because they're automated. So for me, and this is key for entrepreneurs going forward, is we have to digitize our business. And as Liquid Telecom, that is where we see ourselves in the future. We see ourselves as a key partner in digitizing and supporting that digital transformation for our customers. I hope that answers your question.
Hey, Mark. Monday, CEO of Digital. We're based out of Zambia. Question is, one thing I noticed when I got here, there's a poor adoption of mobile apps. For example, I noticed that Tanzania, for example, they have like some Uber, but here, Orlando ain't working so well. So there is something about the population as well, education. So there are a lot of young entrepreneurs here who come up with great products, but they struggle with distribution and a marketing budget. So in partnering with something like with a big company like Liquid, do you have something in there to help with distribution and probably get over that those barriers?
Yeah, so as Liquid ourselves, we have platforms that can host, but we are not aggregators in any way. So we would need to work with app aggregators to support that and to support those platforms. But I think, digital transformation, you're absolutely right. There's no point in your business transforming digitally if your customers are not transforming digitally as well. It's a very important aspect. But, the process has to begin somewhere. People have to take the lead. And it's important to ensure that you are there taking the lead and you are there sitting in that position. And when I say we're transforming business and we're digitizing the business, it doesn't mean that you now don't take food orders for people who walk in and you don't have a phone number anymore. Of course, that part still continues. But what you're doing is you're involving your business and making it suited for what the future looks like. We have huge numbers of subscribers on smartphones, way more than we had even just 3 or 4 years ago. So there's definitely a trend. And if you look at the younger population, they will lead that particular trend. They will lead that particular process. So it's important as your business to just understand and see what those trends are looking like and make sure that you're part of that particular journey.
Hi, Mike. Hi, everyone. My name is Aaron Dondela, and I'm a poultry farmer. So, as an entrepreneur, you need the ability to sell. So, over the years, how have you developed your selling skills? And also, if you've read books on selling, what books have you read on selling that have helped you become a better salesperson that you are today? Thank you.
Okay, that's absolutely. I think if you're an entrepreneur, selling is probably the skill I would say you have to, the main skill that you have to have. And as I mentioned, if it's not something that's natural to you, then it's important to engage either a partner or an employee or somebody who's going to support that. Because if you don't, it's going to be very difficult to market your business. There are ways that you can market your business using partners. It doesn't have to be an employee, but I would definitely recommend doing that. In terms of myself and selling is essentially, there are 3 very important things to selling. One is you need to listen, okay? You need to listen. You cannot sell without listening. You've got to hear what people are saying. What are they looking for? What is it that they want? You're a poultry farmer, that's excellent. But now you need to know how do people want their chickens? Do they want them dressed? Do they not? Do they want the inners inside? Do they want the inners sold separately? Do they want them delivered? Do they want to collect them? Do they want them fresh? Do they want them frozen? That information you will only get from your customers. You can assume it, and you can say, well, somebody next door does it this way. But if you listen to your customers, so selling, the first thing about selling is listening. And through that listening, you will be able to perfect your selling, because you will understand what people are saying, and then you'll perfect it. The second thing is product knowledge, okay? Product knowledge, service knowledge is important. There is nothing worse than a salesperson who doesn't know his product, okay? Because they'll be caught out. Absolutely, they'll be caught out. Because if you're an entrepreneur and you don't know the products that you're selling, you don't know what the benefits and the needs are. Because remember, when you're selling something to somebody, you are solving a problem for those people, for the person you're selling to. That's what you're doing. You are solving a problem. If you're selling them dinner, you're solving the problem that they're hungry and they need to eat, okay? If you are selling them a legal service, you are selling, they have a problem and they need some legal advice and they need some support from a legal perspective. They have books that they need to be accounted, so you are selling them an accounted solution. So there's always that, there's always the aspect that you are solving that person's problem. So knowing your product means that you can better suit and solve that problem for the person that you're selling to. If I give you a very simple example on that, and as you mentioned, you do poultry farming. If my client, you find a client and they are in they're based in Mazabuka, and your farm is say, let's say in Lusaka West, and they want to buy 100 chickens from you every week because they're not happy with the supply of chickens. Maybe they're a shop or something and not happy with the supply of chickens locally, okay? Now you as the entrepreneur know they need 100 chickens. But first you need to listen to them. When do they need them delivered? Do they need them delivered all in one go? Do they need them delivered over a period of time? Do they want them frozen? Do they want them fresh? Could you deliver them somewhere else fresh and then have them slaughtered locally and delivered to the site? So there's a lot of things you need to listen to. Now you need to know what was the reason that they didn't buy those chickens locally. What were the problems associated with buying those chickens locally? So you would ask those questions. And once you have that information, you'll be able to deliver exactly what the customer is looking for. And once you do that, you create loyalty and you create trust. Once you create loyalty and you create trust, you have a customer. I am very fortunate that I have some customers that I've worked with no matter where I worked. No matter where I worked. I can move with them, wherever I go. Okay? Why? Because you create trust and you create loyalty with that customer. And they say, you know what, I just want to buy from Mark, because he knows what I like, he knows how I like it, and I want to deal with him. So, but that only comes because you deliver what the customer has asked for. So just going back to those 3 points. The first point on selling is you must listen. The second point is that you must know your products and services. You must know them inside out. And you must be very, 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 very up to speed on everything. And thirdly, you must be solving the customer's problems and deliver on your promise to create that trust and the loyalty. If you do those 3 things, you will continue to make sales, you will create a brand, you will create a good customer image, customer service image, and your business will grow within that community.
My name is Timothy from Mungwa. I'm into farming, but I'm a teacher by profession. I wanted to find out on the part where you said when you see the CEO, you can go and have a chat. There's an aspect of what is called as bootlicking. So my question is, how do you make yourself stand out without the other guys labeling you to be a bootlicker? Because you don't want to be the black sheep with your friends when you go back to say, this is a guy who likes laughing with the boss. And that's my question. Thank you very much.
If you stop to listen to every dog barking, you will never get to where you're going. Okay? The same people who might be saying to you that you're bootlicking wish they could be in the position that you're in. Okay? So, but it's okay, and I get it. But I think that, being an entrepreneur or being a career-oriented person who wants to be successful is actually quite a lonely thing. It is really. Because everybody else around you will probably want to fill, at some point, some sort of negativity. It's a natural thing. But you as the individual, you've got to remain positive, and you've got to know what it is you're trying to achieve and just continue to do it. There's many times I can think of in my past where I've been in that particular position, But for me, so long as the people who matter, and that would be, if I'm an entrepreneur, my customers and my stakeholders. If I'm in a career, it would be, my superiors and the stakeholders in that business. So long as they are not getting a negative impression of me, then I wouldn't really worry about the rest. And I would, because the last laugh will always be on you. Do you know what I mean? The last laugh will always be on you. So, but you need to be thick-skinned. And being an entrepreneur, you have to be quite thick-skinned. And it happens all the time. I mean, I hear it all the time. And people say, his business is not doing that well. He's not really. They're not really doing that well. Because humans can be naturally jealous, and you have to understand that. But you in yourself know what you're trying to do. You've got the commitment, you've got the resolve, you've made a plan, you've put your strategy together, you know how to get from A to B to C. Just continue on that path and try not to listen to the white noise, because sometimes if you do, it'll distract you so much that you'll actually be taken off your path.
Hi, Chief. My name is Shadrick. I'm from MTN FinTech. My question is not related to where I work. It's personal. Yeah. My question is, how do you get to know the kind of a partner that you need for your startup if you already have the sales skills that you really need for you to start up? And how do you set your targets right to make sure that you achieve them according to the way your financial projections are? Thank you.
Yeah, those are very good questions. So, in any business, choosing the right partners is very important. And it's very seldom that a business can succeed without having partners. And I'm not talking about business partners, but I mean entities that you work with to support your business moving forward. I gave the example of the food industry. You need someone to deliver that food, for example. That partnership is important. My first, and this is just personal advice, nobody has to take it, but I would definitely avoid the family and friends aspect. I think for me, and that's a personal decision, I think it's very difficult when you do that, bringing family and friends in as partners or as business partners or as outsourced partners for your business. It's very, very hard to set down and keep the KPIs that are needed. Okay? So that's the first point I would, and that's a personal thing. I'm not suggesting that people do, but that's what I believe. Okay? You need someone that's very easy to hire or fire, and sometimes with friends and family that can be quite difficult. I think the second point is that you must have very clear KPIs set out between yourself and your partner. So if you're saying that you are a poultry farm and you're a farmer, you're a brilliant farmer, you grow amazing chickens, right? But you maybe just need someone to help on the sales side, on the distribution side. You need to make sure when you bring that person in, you set the right KPIs around the distribution model, around how many are going to be sold, around where the triggers are for payment, where the parameters around information coming back to you, the feedback, all these aspects. But you also need to set it up in a way that it's not too onerous on you either, so that if it's not working, you can easily come out of the arrangement. So you would say, you need to sell this many every month, and this is what you'll get. And for me, it's always the carrot and stick. You must have that, but you must also have the carrot. And if you oversell, there's a bonus for you, and so on and so forth. So you set those parameters out. The key then is monitoring of that contract. We do a lot of KPIs, we do a lot of contracts, but then they're sort of left, and we don't really monitor them because we're focusing on, maybe the farming part. We're focusing on growing these chickens, but the storeroom, the cold room is just filling up, and nothing's being sold because we're not focusing on what your distribution partner is supposed to be doing. So spend time ensuring that you have regular communication with them and regular feedback, and the KPIs are being met. So the key is probably that contract between the two entities, and making sure that people are delivering on what has been contractually agreed. I hope that answers the question.
All right, any more questions?
Hi, Mark. Good evening, and good evening, everybody. So my question is on the professional side. My story is very similar to yours, but I am learning now. I wanted to ask, aside from performance, what else do you think has attributed to where you are now?
Okay. I think a couple of things that I can probably lay down. One is my personal brand, which I mentioned earlier. You know, the first thing to sell is yourself. You know, your brand is important. And that can be done in many different ways, you know, whatever is comfortable to you. But people need to see what you have delivered, but they also need to see the potential of what else you could do. So they need to understand that. You would market yourself in that way. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing is probably being flexible. You know, I've done many different roles. I've had many different roles, many different jobs. You need to be flexible, and you need to sort of not pigeonhole yourself too much. Be a little bit all-rounded, so that if you need to divert over where you are, you can go into that diversion. So being flexible and learning, you know, learn every day. There's always something to learn. You can never stop learning. And if you have got an idea of where you think a business is going to go, then quickly learn about what it looks like being there, so that you're ahead of the curve all the time. You're always in front. We can see where things are going in a couple of years. We can see where certain businesses are going to head, what will become their priorities, what were their priorities before. So start to learn. We know technology is going to play a bigger role in business. So there's no point in saying, I'm not interested in technology. You know, learn about it, read about it. We have never been in an age like we are now, where there's so much access to information. And at a relatively, you know, you don't have to go to a library to get a book out. You can get this online. And I don't just mean Google searching, I mean actual research. So take time and read. If I know there's new products or there's new services that are coming out, you know, and I can see it's happening as a world trend, I will always take time to read about them, so I can see how I can better suit them for my market. The tourism sector is very, very, you know, close to my heart. I'm always reading about wildlife. I'm always reading about animal conservation. I'm always trying to learn more about those sorts of things. So I think apart from delivery or performance, it's your ability to learn, it's your ability, and real sort of learning specific to what you're trying to do. Being flexible, yeah, those are probably the main things.
My name is Ricardo David Sichuan. I am 17 years old. Last year, COVID was, I think, the best thing to happen to me, although it was a problem for some. But during that time, I discovered multiple streams of income, like coding, visual effects, social media marketing, and e-commerce, also dropshipping. Now, there's a problem. I have exams this year, and I also want to be an architect. So, what is your advice for an indecisive youth with multiple passions?
So I think for a 17-year-old, you have a lot of options. Yeah. You have a lot of options, so you're very fortunate in that sense. You have absolutely hit the nail on the head when you said that you are looking at the positive effects of the COVID period, taking into consideration all of those digital opportunities that we know exist, and you're obviously benefiting from them. I think what you need to ask yourself is, where do you see yourself in the future? That's the key point. You want to be an architect, that's brilliant. But do you believe that even being an architect in its form that you are going to be studying is where architects are going to be in 5 years' time? Because you've already seen the future of the digital side, right? are architects going to be operating in the same way in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time? That's the question I would first ask myself. You know, are they going to be? Is it going to be more computer generation architecture? Is it going to be 3D printing? Is it going to be, you know, done through AI? You know, these are the questions you should ask yourself, because you already have the ability to see opportunity in the digital space. So you need to combine that with your opportunity or your passion or your want to be an architect. So that's the first point. The second point is there's no reason that you can't operate these digital businesses whilst you're studying. You know, absolutely no reason. And that's the beauty of digitized businesses, is they are a lot easier to run, especially, you know, those that are fully online. There are a lot, you know, you creating an e-commerce website and then having people operate on your platform, actually there's very little work for you, as you know. But your ability then to earn from it perpetually as you go forward is quite vast. So I think the answer to your question is, think about where you want to be, what you want to do, where you see yourself, and then work backwards from that. That's the key point. And don't ever feel that you have to not do any of the others. There's always a way to keep some of them going in unison.
Good evening, Mark. Good evening, everybody. I think my question sort of rides on the first two questions asked earlier. In our environment, is it possible to completely move a product by innovation alone? Is it possible to move a product by innovation, how innovative it is? Or you do need some, like I think you are trying to hint to, some muscle of some sort. I think financial muscle. Do our markets, and if it is possible, the question then is, how do you approach a market that you need to put an innovative product that's totally, you cannot start small, let's say. Let me give you an example which is more in your line. In the South African environment, I think you know about the voice over internet protocol, the VoIP phones. They're everywhere. Literally, all businesses run with landline phones that are fixed to the office, which can have transfers to. Yeah. In Zambia, everybody's with a cell phone. And it seems to be normal that people can just say, oh, you can call us, or you can call my salesperson. South Africa, they've got a IPBX, you call a VoIP line, it gets transferred, it records the call, you get. You want to start something like that in Zambia, but you cannot start small. There's nothing about starting small in a place like that. And then also, you don't have the muscle to just go in like liquid and say, okay, let's say like water, sorry. You go in like water, there's people selling water already. There's people selling water, but in a bank, we are the water of choice in the country. So is it possible to start an innovative product without the muscle in an economy like that? If it is possible, the question then is, maybe we can give us some guidelines as to how it's possible.
Okay, it's a very good question. I think that there's a couple of questions in there that I'll answer. The first one is, you can absolutely create an innovative product and sell it in a market. Because just in that word innovative, it means that you've created something that doesn't already exist. And that's the key. If you want to do the VoIP phones and the big players are doing it, of course it's going to be difficult, but you're going up against a product that's already in the market. If you're going to create innovation around it, and you're going to come up with something that's slightly different, that maybe isn't being offered, then you're creating a niche. And by creating a niche, you're giving yourself that opportunity. It's not to say that when you create that niche, the bigger players are not going to say, whoa, that looks like an interesting niche, let's also do it. It's very possible. But you can create a niche in the market. You can be innovative. If I give you practical examples of what I mentioned earlier in the tourism sector, it was to create an offering that wasn't there in the market, that was something slightly different. And if we look at it in other spaces and other areas, there is ways that we can create products and services in the market that are innovative enough that they're slightly different from what's on offer, so therefore they become unique. Going to the financial question, it's very difficult. Generally, finance is very difficult. It's one thing that I think our entrepreneurs will struggle with. For me, I always I had to build what I had very slowly because I never had the financial muscle to build it quickly. If you have the ability to either bring in a partner who has equity, or you have the ability to borrow, this will obviously make your journey a lot shorter. But that doesn't mean that because you don't have that, you can't build a business from the beginning slowly and consistently reinvest into the business. And this is one area that I always would advise, is that if you're building a business, don't drain it. You know, if you have to eat eggs for 2 weeks, eat eggs. You know what I mean? Don't drain the business. Put the money back in, because everything you put back in will multiply for you. It will grow your business at a faster rate. You know, so if you've got an innovative idea, the easiest innovative ideas are the ones that are around services. It's a bit easier than product, because as you know, product requires either some sort of creation or manufacturing. There's a cost associated with that. Service is a concept, and you just have to sell the concept. So it's a little bit easier to create innovative services than it is to create innovative products. But that doesn't mean that you can't do products, it's just a bit easier. So in answer to your question, yes, you can be innovative, you can find a niche in your market, and on the financing side, if you don't have access, my advice, and this is personal from my side, is that you have to plow as much of that money back into the business all the time. Don't take any, if you can be without it, and you're willing to not buy the new shoes, to not buy the new car, to not do up the house, and just keep applying the money back into the business, it will stand you in good stead down the line.
Hello everyone. My name is Lorenzo Claxton. I'm a marketing manager with Yasmira Fabrication. We manufacture world-class products locally. So my question is a little more on a situation where you've ticked all the boxes, right? You manufacture fantastic products. It sits in a place in the market where it solves a lot of problems. Its quality is fantastic. People love it, and you're making your money, right? But the thing is, you're trying to cater for cash flow, and cash flow is very important. I think it can kill your business, right? If not managed properly, if you're not investing in the future. So now, you're earning this cash every day, but then the currency is losing value, right? And the market is very volatile, such that if your pricing gets a little too high and you've got a lot of inputs coming in, and they're getting more and more expensive, how do you hedge or invest the same cash that you're getting that's losing value every day? Is there any smarter way to hedge it than just simply saving?
Yeah, it's a very very difficult problem, that one. Any business that requires input that's imported, and then, as you said, manufactured, those inputs are sort of combined, and your product is manufactured and you're sold, you are always going to have that particular challenge. It's very similar for us in the ISP space. We import internet capacity. So every time there is a fluctuation in the currency, for us as a business, it's a direct impact on our business, because that capacity, unfortunately, we don't browse the internet a lot. There's not many sites that we visit locally. So most of the sites we visit are in South Africa, Europe, and the US. And because of that, we have to pay for access into those particular sites, and that cost is a US dollar cost. So I completely get that scenario. From our perspective, and even from the perspective in the tourism industry, where you have a lot of inputs that might be around vehicles, you have products, you have machinery and equipment that you need to bring in for the lodges and so on. These are all dollar based, and then you want to compete in the market, so you want to create a kwacha price. I think three things that really are important. First is, if it's possible. If it's not, it's also understandable, but to try and localize some of those inputs, okay? It's not always easy, and I know that sounds like an easy option, but it's not an easy option, right? So that's the first thing. For those who can, it's to try and localize some of those. The second is to try and look at a longer term view, okay, and work backwards from that longer term view. So you would say, okay, we anticipate that this is where it might go in terms of devaluation of the currency. We know how much input we're going to need for our anticipated sales, and you would then hedge against that. The challenge of that is that it affects your sales price, okay? Now, when it affects your sales price, you lose your competitive edge in the market. But what you need to then do is that you need to now try to create unique value propositions to sort of bridge that particular gap. And I've seen this with a lot of entities actually, where, okay, so if I'm manufacturing a certain product, and that product is going to be, it's got input costs that are in USD, and I'm selling them for local currency, and I'm being impacted by the exchange rate, I will mark my price up, but I will include some local services. Like I'll say free delivery, okay? Or I'll say a consultant will come to your business or to your house to do a free survey, or give you a free 3D diagram of what we're trying to offer. Now those costs are kwacha costs, they're not dollar costs. So you can use them to blend against your dollar costs. You've created a slightly different product offering, so you can sit a little higher in the price barrier, but you can justify that by saying, I'm offering you these additional services, like free delivery, like a free consultant, other aspects that you might be able to fit in there that are local currency costs that you can use to sort of dilute the impact on the exchange rate. And that is essentially one area that you can use. Another one is volume. Obviously you forego margin and you replace it with volume, but that is also very difficult because you don't control volume. Volume is controlled by the market. So if you've got a product where you can slightly reduce the price, but you know that the volume will go up, then of course that volume will reduce your individual margin, but your overall profitability will still be very strong. So yeah, those are some of the tactics that I would suggest, but it's a very difficult place to be, for sure.
All right, our last question.
Thank you. Hi Mark, hi everyone. I wrote my question down just in case I forgot it. My name is Chinesha Sampa. I am the marketing communications / media person for Festivals Education Center. We are a kindergarten to secondary school offering ECZ, Cambridge, as well as the International Baccalaureate curriculums. And basically we have been in Zambia since 2010, but haven't been out there because we are also NGO run. And my question is in relation to COVID-19. I'm going to make reference to the gentleman up, or the 17-year-old, so if I'm forgetting your name. And my question is in relation to COVID-19. Seeing as everything has cost moved digitally, and people are selling, marketing, and meeting people on cyberspace and basically virtually. How do you get to, I would assume, your marketing or your leads, if I can call them that, if your people, the people that you're targeting are between the age ranges of 35 to maybe 60, and these are individuals that might have taken a bit more time to get online or spend little to no time on Facebook, Instagram, or looking at websites on Google. So how do you get to those individuals knowing full well that COVID-19 right now does not allow you or hold you the opportunity to meet them in person?
Okay. So a couple of different ways that you can do that. I've seen some marketing campaigns or tools where there's an indirect targeting. Okay. So what happens is that you will target the youth because you know that they access online a lot, but you're indirectly targeting their guardians' parents through them. There are some very smart ways that this is done on the internet, and you can have a look, but you essentially, so if I'm selling a product that I know suits a slightly older person, maybe somebody in my own bracket, but I'm worried that they might not be using those platforms, I can target the younger people, so their children or their other people within the social circles, and by doing that, when the conversations are happening, they will be able to say to the parent or to the guardian or to the older person, oh, you know what, you can actually do this, I saw this somewhere, you can actually do it online. So an example of that might be you are doing car insurance, okay? Now car insurance, we know that car insurance will target certain people, especially those who are over the age of driving, right? If you're under the age of getting a license, then you're not going to be interested in car insurance. But it doesn't mean that you can't have a targeted advert to a slightly younger generation that speaks about that product in a way that they would relate to it and then pass that information on to a parent. It might be a funny cartoon, it might be an interesting storyline, a joke, or something else. So there are very smart ways that happens on the internet, and creative people will start thinking about how they can do that. But marketing through channels to get to other people is a very common way to do it, especially in this COVID period. But I think the other point to make is that we mustn't underestimate how many people have switched to going online during this particular period, especially for work. A lot of people are working from home and they're starting to use the Zoom tools and the Teams and to work. So they're starting to do that. And what happens is that people, they've got a Zoom call, they might switch on, it's starting in 10 minutes, they'll put their Facebook on or they'll go to Google, and it's at that point that you need to be visible. Your business needs to be visible at that point to say, it's a sponsored service that you're offering, or it's an advert, or whatever it might be, is available, and they'll look at it and they'll click on it and they'll go through that process. What's important is to understand that you might be dealing with a demographic that is not as used to that, so don't make it too complicated, make it quite smooth and easy, so that the process is, sometimes they won't want to do the whole click and send, they just literally want to see a phone number to call, because some people prefer to do that, so make that option available. But yeah, there is ways to target through certain demographics to get to others. And secondly, I don't think we should underestimate how many people are actually online nowadays. When you're sitting at home, and a lot of people have been sitting at home, most people are now picking up their phones or picking up their laptops if they have them, and using them a lot more than they would have done before. I hope that answered your question.
Let's get to, I think, also talk about what you do in your free time. I think we've spoken a lot about your your work at the corporate side, your business. What is Mark Townsend up to on a weekend or just after a long day of work?
Okay, I love the outdoors. You know, I really have a passion for wildlife and for conservation. So at times I spend it outdoors in the national parks. I like spending time there. But aside from that, I'm a very big Man U fan. Okay, very big Man U fan. So if Man U playing, then I'm definitely watching. Okay, we're doing a lot better than we have for a little while. So I do like the football, but I'm a social person. I'm a very social person. I think anyone who wants to run their business and wants to grow their business, I really encourage them to be social. Networking is really important, and it doesn't have to be heavy. Network doesn't have to be heavy. You don't have to do a sales pitch every time you're with people, but you can drop little things in that just start to sort of whet the appetite and sort of build the conversation. But also, opportunity is out there, and for you to see opportunity and find it, you need to be social. It's very difficult to sit at home or at your business and find opportunity. You need to sort of go in the field, go in the trenches, as we say in sales, and look for it. Look, it's difficult now with COVID. We can't do that, but in a non-COVID sort of time, being social, being out there, networking, getting to know people in different industries, different opportunities, is really important, yeah.
Lastly, you've marketed yourself very well in the ICT sector, telecoms to be precise. What are you thinking of doing next? What's your next move? What's your next plan?
I still have a lot to do in ICT. I think there's some real opportunity, and anyone who is considering sort of digital products and services as a business, I think there's some real opportunity in there over the next 5 to 10 years. And I think anyone who finds their niche and corners that market is going to be pretty successful. So there's that aspect. I will probably venture more into tourism and travel over time, because that's really what I have a big passion for that, and conservation. So those are probably the areas that I will go into later, after my sort of ICT career is done. And just to be a good citizen, to ensure that I have I always say that wealth is created, it's not shared. So I'm always happy to share my thoughts with people, my experiences, because if other businesses are doing well, it actually supports me. If everybody here is having a good time and making money for their business, then they're all going to come and stay in one of my lodges, So the more you make in your business, the more opportunity I have to have people in my lodge. And I honestly believe that, it's important that all businesses do well, because they support each other. They do. It's an ecosystem. And if I'm selling more tomatoes, then I'm probably buying more onions, or I'm buying more other things, So it works in that round robin. So yeah, I think it's important to support startups, and that's something I'll always give advice and always be available to people. Those are probably the key areas.
On that note, thank you so much for being available for this discussion. It's been very insightful, very informative, and I'm sure you've seen from the number of business cards you have, I'm not even sure if they filled up your pocket yet, but people really have been looking forward to meeting you. So thank you so much for your time.
No, you're very welcome. Everyone's very welcome.
Round of applause for our special guest this evening, Mr. Mark Townsend, CEO of Telecom. Thank you as well for coming through this evening for the Entrepreneurship Startup Guide. In COVID times, you made it through. This just shows how much interest you had to get this information. We've seen some people just coming through right now at the end, but the good news is at least he's got some time to spare to speak with a couple of you as members of the audience. Also, major thanks to our partners this evening. On Cart, they are into smart shopping, the online shopping, fashion, apparel, groceries, and whatnot is coming through at your doorstep. Be sure to follow the platforms, digital events, who are the organizers of this event. It happens every month at the end of the month on the last Wednesdays. So be sure to follow the Facebook page for more information of the next event and who the next speaker will be. Also, you get to follow the Entrepreneurship Sub-Guide platform on Instagram as well as Facebook, and iCreative being our partners as well for that branding, your car branding, t-shirt branding, and many more as far as branding is concerned. And not forgetting Zambian breweries for making available the Stella Tour that I've seen some people having. So if you haven't had yours yet, you can pass through the bar and get one and have the drink. Faisal, water as well, and the Coram Hotel for partnering with us. Not forgetting Ito Mobile for the notebooks that you're seeing on your seats. My name is Chumaika Chileshe, and you're speaking about selling your own self. So you can catch me on Diamond TV. I host the Diamond Breakfast Show every Monday to Friday from 6 to 8 a.m. I'm also on Radio Phoenix every evening from 18 hours to 21 hours. Clearly not tonight, but you get to catch me next week on the show. Have a pleasant evening, and remember, let's network and let's get to know each other while we can. Thank you.